Well, thank y'all for being here. I'm Rick Cleveland. I'm the Executive Director of the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame and Museum, but for 40-something years before that, I was a sports writer, sports columnist, sports editor in Mississippi. And when I got into the business at the Hattiesburg High Flashes newspaper, what we got? Let's try it a little bit further down. When I got into the business at the Hattiesburg High Flashes newspaper in 1967, back in the dark ages, there were no female sports writers at all. And that has changed. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that. And the first thing I'm going to do is introduce the important part of our panel. Starting on my far left is Courtney Cronin, who is a video journalist for the Clarion Ledger. To her immediate right is Donica Phifer, who's the sports editor of the New Albany Gazette. And to my immediate left is Melissa Meador, who is the sports editor of the Monroe Journal. And I'm going to start on the far end with Courtney, and I ask each of you just to tell a little bit about yourself and how you got into the business.
Sure. I know I had some of you in my morning session. I'm Courtney Cronin. As Rick said, I work at the Clarion Ledger as a video journalist. What I do is I cover high school football, college football, high school basketball, and some sports enterprise projects. I'm 2 years out of college, so I haven't, where you guys are sitting right now, that wasn't me too long ago. Got into the business in high school. I hit the ground running with radio broadcasting. Went to college at Indiana University, graduated with a degree in broadcast journalism and Spanish. Did television in college, worked for my student television station, had an internship at the Fox station in Indianapolis. I've covered, everything from high school sports to the NFL, and I worked for 24/7 Sports when I was in college. Then I worked, my first year out, had a postgraduate internship covering the student athlete story, I guess that's what they want to call it at the NCAA. And then about a year ago, May 1st, I started at the Clarion Ledger. So anything you see online, any sports-related video, that's what I do.
I'm Donica Phifer, and I work about 35 minutes up the road in New Albany, Mississippi, Union County. And I came to Ole Miss. Most of my professional or student experience comes from Ole Miss. I started right out the gate as a fresh off the bus freshman at the DM, did work for Newswatch, did work for Rebel Radio. Just, absorbed everything I could here, interacted a lot with my professors and just kind of absorbed what I could, learned what I could. And then when I finished school here, I went to New York and did an internship for 3 months through the University of Mississippi, New York Exchange Program or something like that. Great experience. And then I moved back home with my parents and worked in Corinth, Mississippi for a year as a sports writer. And did that, and then took the job that I have now. And both jobs that I've had professionally are prep work, which is just public high school sports. And so it's everything from powerlifting to archery to bowling to the big three: football, basketball, baseball, softball, things like that. So there you go.
I'm Melissa Meador. I work at the Monroe Journal in Amory. Been there for about 2 years now, and like Donica said, cover everything under the sun. I think I was at archery a week and a half ago. I kind of got into sports in a weird way. I went to Mississippi State first and applied to work at the Reflector there and checked every box but sports. Guess who was the one that called me back? The sports editor. And I think the first thing I covered was track, which was, as you can guess, probably not the most exciting sport to cover. But that segued into me covering college baseball, and as y'all all know, at State, that's a big thing. Came here, got my master's, graduated from here 4 years ago, so literally that was me sitting over there 4 years ago. Started working at the Daily Journal on the copy desk, and that's designing pages, editing stories, which wasn't my ideal profession, and then sports editor job came open, and I've been there for 2 years and covered everything under the sun, stood out in the rain during football, and all that great kind of stuff.
Has it really just been 2 years that you've been there?
Mm-hmm. 2 years.
That's
Ladies, but when women first started getting into the sports writing, becoming sports journalists, there was quite a controversy about it. You know, women in the locker room. I just wonder, are there, and raise your hand, or just, you can go one by one, whoever wants to tackle it, but have you encountered any special problems being a woman in sports writing?
Okay.
Yeah, I've gotten that question a lot. I guess a specific criticism I've said in my last session I was going to save till now. Ole Miss, Missouri this year. Part of my job, I film games. So what that entails, I'll take the games, I'll do highlight packages, use it for analysis pieces, post-game stories. And I was at the far end zone, away from the student section. That'd be the south end zone here, south end zone. Mike Mary, after the whistle was blown, Missouri had just scored, and Mike Mary takes this whomever from Missouri and just shoves him into the back of the end zone. I'm filming. I get completely obliterated, knocked out. I mean, there's a GIF of it. Don't do it now, but if you type in photographer abuse GIF, you'll see me just go flying. And my phone had died when I was here, so I was like in the photographer room on the field level charging it, and all of a sudden I see the GIF, I'm in pain. I'm like, but it's, it's whatever, it's hilarious. And all the positive reaction I was getting on Twitter, just, from my friends, family, people who follow me, hope you're feeling okay, crazy. One person who just so happens to be a sports writer, and I won't say where, had the gall to tweet at me, just another dumb woman, dumb female not knowing how to get out of the way. And I was just appalled. And the thing that I think a lot of women run into in sports journalism is that, you have to have a thick skin, you have to be tough, but you don't need to be it in the abrasive sense, because a lot of people think the women that are in sports, they're gonna come at you, guns blazing. And a lot of people know my personality, I probably would have, but the way I responded to that, because I have such a loyal following with my Twitter followers that they were attacking the person for me. I didn't have to do much. All I needed to do was turn around and say, "Is that how you would talk to your mother?" That was a mic drop. Talk about a mic drop. That was one of my shining moments on Twitter of just giving someone a backhanded slap to the face. But no, I think we all run into it. People are still not comfortable with it. I know that they take a look at the landscape now. I'm 23 years old. 23 years ago, I'm sure the landscape looked a lot different. But even now, I'll still be the only female that I'll see at certain sporting events, or, out of the media scrum, which is the same guys that cover the same events time and time again. They've got their clique, and they don't want a female a part of that. It's a tough thing to break into, but the prejudice and stereotypes are still there for sure.
Yeah, I've had similar thing happen to me, not a GIF or anything with that, at the state basketball tournament last year, where I got knocked down by a guy and had a fan say, "If you would just get out of the way, you're being a dumb girl, you're not supposed to be on the court." I was like, there are girls out on the court right now. There's, girls playing for a state championship. But the thing I run into the most is again, it's just people, not anyone necessarily being rude, but just curious, is the locker room dilemma. How do you go in the locker room? The answer to that, and y'all may do this differently, I don't. But I'm covering kids who are underage. They're, 13 to 18 years old. And just the rule is, if I need to talk to a kid that's in the locker room, I ask for someone to go get them and bring them out. Because when you're working a high school beat specifically, and you're a woman and you're dealing with boys, or young men, I won't call the boys, I'll call them young men, but you have to be very aware of what you're doing. You have to be, I always think about when, in the summer when it's hot, I'm very aware of what I'm wearing. If I'm wearing shorts, how long they are, you have to be dressed appropriately. You can't, and it's different. Men don't worry about that. They don't. I see in the summer covering, we have a Cotton States League in Albany, and it runs all summer long, and I will see other sports writers out there, in Nike shorts and a tank top, and it's totally fine because it's a man. But if I wore that, the parents and the coaches and the kids, it would be an issue. So it's that sort of thing. But and then also I have gotten the comments like that of, I had a guy at an Ole Miss football game tell me, you know, you're just a dumb girl. You don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, are you really? We're going to go there? You know, we haven't evolved beyond that. I probably know more about football than you do. Like when I was 5, I knew what a first down was. So don't play that card with me just because you disagree because I'm a woman. If you disagree, just disagree on a fundamental level and leave the gender out of it.
I mean, I've ran into both of those instances. I think probably one of the things that I've experienced most is, you know, Donica and I cover a community, just a soul community. So I have 6 schools. I think do you have 6?
Yeah.
So we're working with a small group of coaches. You know, I think Courtney probably sees more coaches than what we do. And it kind of takes a long time to build a rapport with coaches. And I think as a female, it takes even longer because you have to prove to them, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to act in a professional manner. I'm going to write a story that looks like I know what I'm talking about because, you know, like Donica said, many men think women don't know what a first down is or what traveling is in basketball or, you know. I would say that's probably the biggest thing. And you do get the ones that call you dumb and tell you don't know what you're doing. But what I've experienced over my 2 years now is these people have gotten enough used to me to know that, you know, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to work my hardest and get everything right. So, you know, there's ways to get around it. There's ways to overcome it, for sure.
Well, I've covered a lot of events with women sports writers and women sports casters. And one thing I've noticed is that coaches can be as patronizing as anybody. How do you deal with that, with a coach who just, you know, gives you the little lady bit?
I ran into that a lot. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not from here. From Chicago. Mississippi was a foreign country to me 11 months ago. I moved down here from Indianapolis, and I ran into, you know, people thinking I didn't know anything. What do you know about Aberdeen football and West Octibaha and Ocean Springs? You know, I work at a statewide paper. I have to know everything, top to bottom, and that's tough. I mean, you know, anywhere you work, just coming off as knowledgeable, and I think, you know, being young, being female, has a little bit of its disadvantage. And I've run into coaches before. I did a series called Camped Out. It was our way, the Clarion Ledger's way of doing like a high school football preview, because we do have, you know, our tabs that come in print, but I did it was a 13 series, so 13 different schools. I went to a different school each day early in August. And some of the coaches were great because they are human and they've evolved to the point where they know that women can cover sports. Others, not so much. And it doesn't really matter where you are, but, you know, I was out in the metro area at a school in Jackson, or in the Jackson metro area, and it was a midnight practice, and one of the coaches that I spoke to afterwards really wasn't going to give me the time of day and was breaking down things to me to the fundamental level where I knew he was doing it, thinking, well, I know that you don't know, you know, what a dime package is, or I know that you know, don't really seem to understand like why we're running this receiver set. I'm like, no, sir, actually, I was watching that, and I was completely in awe of just how terrible coaching the decision was. I mean, I'm thinking that to myself. I didn't say that, obviously, but you always got to rise above it. You just got to, sometimes you just have to take it and still ask your question. Don't try to, I mean, trying to outsmart coaches that maybe think that you don't know what you're talking about, it's just going to end, you're just going to end up in a worse situation. But just, you know, a lot of times, and it's hard, having to be the bigger person, and it sucks a lot of times because you know that you know more, and they're just patronizing you because some people want to play that card. But it's, you know, you just gotta, you know, keep it eye level, and, you know, just keep it as professional as possible, because the second you put emotion into it, second you get irritated, is when they know they won. And hate that the fact that it has to come down to a win-loss game sometimes, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I actually had that happen a couple weeks ago. A man said something to me, and I don't think his comment had anything to do with the fact I was a girl, but it really upset me, and I let it, you know, had a knee-jerk reaction to it and popped off something that I shouldn't have said. And don't do that. It's very unprofessional, and I have apologized since then. But just, you have to control yourself, because, you know, I've had that, you know, thankfully no coach that I routinely have to deal with or have ever routinely had to deal with, they've all been, they might be a little wary, but I like to think, you know, eternal optimists like to think that it's because I was a new person, that they were getting to know a new sports writer, and very protective of their kids and their community and their school, as you should be. And that's one of the keys, I believe, to, it's a little off subject, but being successful in a sports beat or any beat at all is you're protective of your work and the people that you interact with and that you cover. And you've got to be willing to go to the ground for them and defend them and do your best for the, everything I do, my motto is do it for the kids, because the kids are the ones that are putting in the work. I'm just watching the result they put on the field. But I have had, coaches from away teams and things come and kind of, be dismissive and, break stuff down like I'm an idiot and I don't know what he's talking about. And you just have to rise, it's like you said, you have to just rise above it, because you have to be professional, you have to let it go and just do your job. Sometimes that means that you might not get a good quote, you might not get a good soundbite, but you got to take what they give you, because if they're going to do you that way, you could be standing there for 15 minutes and you might have two good quotes that you can use in a story. And that's just part of the job. And I'm fortunate enough in the job I have now, the sports editor before me was also a woman. So when I came in, there wasn't that issue of, oh, well, this is a girl. They were used to having a girl. She had been there for 4 years. She had done a phenomenal job. So it wasn't so much me coming in replacing a man and having to deal with that hurdle, so much as having to fill her shoes and do the job at the same level, or I guess beyond. I don't think I've gotten beyond her yet, but maybe I will.
I'll second what they said. I mean, I actually came into my job replacing a guy who had been there 6 years, who some people in the community loved, some people in the community hated him. So there was a lot of places I went that people disliked him. They loved me. They thought I was great. And then the places where I went that he was liked, maybe still, some of those places still aren't 100% on my side. But I think the best thing to do is to not have a reaction, because anytime you show your reaction, then you're just feeding into what they want. So, I mean, for those schools that maybe still don't like me, I still go out, I still cover their kids, I still show that, like Donica said, it's all for the kids. And if you show a reaction and you let it get to you and say, say if it got to me and I decided I'm not going to go to this school over here, well, nobody pays for that but the kids. That's one thing you have to remember, is to defend the kids, especially when you're in a community like what we are.
Yeah, nobody pays for it but the kid and your readers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Donica, you mentioned that sometimes they bring the players out to you.
Yeah.
Is that when, are other sports writers in the locker room covering?
Usually not. Maybe like a state championship situation, that'll happen, but generally I'm the only one there because it's a community
But at the
paper.
state championships, I mean, that's a big deal,
Yeah.
and other people get to go in the locker room and you don't. That's
That
I
happens.
had that happen at football state.
Yeah, I think that's more of a football thing. Basketball, I've never had a football team go to a state championship yet, but basketball, that didn't really happen. I think it probably could have, but it was just the coaches had the presence of mind to kind of pull aside the kids that they thought you'd want to talk to, so I didn't have to have an issue with it. But I would think football, it would be an issue, because they all tend to go in and the sports writers just tend to follow. Because football, everything kind of happens in the locker room.
Well, I've had that roles reversed. I have covered Ole Miss in the NCAA women's basketball tournament, and have been covering the game on deadline, where women's sports writers got to go in and interview the athletes while I had to wait until they got showered and dressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought about that on the way up here, that, there are so many popular women's sports now that it can be a double-edged sword. There can be women's sports where men might not have the access we do.
It certainly made me look at things differently. I mean, I can see in my opinion, whether you're a woman or a man, you should have the same access at the same times. If it means that the locker room is shut down to everybody and they bring them out to everybody, then that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a way around it too. I mean, Donica's right, and that was something I know I talked about in one of my sessions. How do you cover people that are your age or younger? I mean, you're covering, we're all covering kids that are 14.
I have some 12-year-olds.
Yeah, like young kids, and I mean, there's always a speculation of, people always want to see things the wrong way. My rule of thumb for covering stuff in locker rooms, because I was embedded with a basketball team this year. I was day in and day out with the Callaway boys basketball team in Jackson, Mississippi. That means being in the locker room. That means, cameras are on. They're rolling 24/7 when I'm there. And they're going to do what they do, whether it's at the high school level or at the professional level. And I mean, I've heard the horror stories of people like dropping trow and like dropping their towels just to kind of screw with women, just screw with your head a little bit. Eye level. Do not ever, if it comes to that where you need to do an interview, you don't bend down on one knee. Sometimes I know a lot of camera people will do that because people will be sitting in a chair and you want to get a better shot. Eye level. Do not, you have to keep it like that, because the second there's a wandering eye, people are going to speculate and just make something a bigger deal than what it is. And I think the same goes for covering women in locker rooms. I mean, it's a personal thing. Like, people are getting undressed, like they just shower or they're sweaty or it's disgusting. All locker rooms smell, and
all football fields smell.
Yeah, it's
Locker rooms smell the same whether it's a girls or a boys.
Yeah,
it's just, that's a myth.
Sometimes girls are worse.
Yeah.
But I think that's my way of doing it. It's one way.
If anybody in the audience has a question, please raise your hand, because we want to talk about the things. Yes, ma'am.
You mean like coming Ole Miss or any? Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know how it was for you, but I know for here at Ole Miss and at State too, you just basically go in the Student Media Center or the journalism building or whatever and tell somebody, I want to work for student media, and they'll have you fill out a sheet and all the stuff, and somebody will call you back. Now, as someone who's been here, I'm going to talk about Ole Miss for a minute specifically. You might have to go back 2 or 3 times. That's just, it's busy, it's unorganized. They put out a daily paper, and things fall through the cracks. And if you really want to work, you just have to go in and press and press and press. To specifically work in sports, you would need to specifically ask for the sports editor. I don't know who the sports editor is anymore, but we had a friend of mine, actually. She was the first, in many, many years, I don't think the first ever, female sports writer on the DM staff. And she covered, again, it comes back to the gender thing. She mostly covered the female sports, but that was because none of the men wanted to do it. They didn't think they were interesting. And so she did that. She did a very good job. So it's absolutely possible, but you just might have to kind of, if you really want to do it, you'll just have to keep going. Most of my friends on the DM staff weren't. Actually, we never had, I was on the DM staff for 4 years. We never had a sports editor that was a journalism major. They were all like history or, something different, so.
Yeah, I mean, I would say as somebody who worked on my college paper too, there was probably half of our editorial staff was non-journalism majors. It's just one of those things you do as an extracurricular, and you never know. You may be majoring in business and do that and decide you love it and decide to switch to journalism. I would encourage you to do as many different extracurriculars as you can, just to find out what you like.
And that's what I did. I didn't start as a journalism major. I started as a music major, and I just needed a job to make some money because I was poor.
Obviously, if you are a journalism major, it's very important to do those things because those things help you get jobs. I mean, that's things that people right out of college look at.
Absolutely.
Did you work on your paper here?
I think that's the same for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up, let me just tell you too, if you're going to double major, don't. I did it, and to this day, I'm like, why? It was so not worth it.
I triple majored.
Oh.
But I went through 6 years.
But it took me 5.
The 6-year plan, English, journalism, and history.
Well, those are kind of related, though, in a roundabout way.
Anything else, if you would just raise your hand? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say there is somewhat a prejudice, too, in a newsroom. I mean, I know for a fact there is a guy that I worked with when I was on the copy desk at the Journal who 100% didn't think that women knew anything about sports, could cover sports. Well, it just so happened that I got my job over him. So,
Oops.
you know, you just kind of have to, you know, assert yourself and show that I'm here to do a job. I'm not here to listen to you and your criticisms. You know, if they're constructive criticism, if you read my story and you think this is something I could do better, I'm more than willing to listen to that. But if you read my story and think she doesn't know what she's talking about, then give me some proof on that.
You go first. Mine didn't really relate to that, but it's similar.
Okay.
It's similar.
Professionally, I've never had that happen. I've really been, everything that's, any issue I've come up with has been like a parent or a fan or something like that. It's never been a coach or anyone in my workplace. And I'm lucky in that. I mean, I absolutely admit it. I'm very lucky. At the DM, however, and I feel like it's not that way anymore because the DM, you know, there's been women's editors, there's been women in every role basically now, I think, except sports editor. And I even had people encourage me to apply for it, and I couldn't commit that much time to do it. But I ran into issues where I wrote a sports column back in, what was it, 2010 when we lost to Jacksonville State? It was horrible. I still have nightmares.
I want to say that was actually 08. So I think that was my first year here.
That's like second to last year when it all crashed and burned that year. And I just was very angry, and I had someone, you know, say something about, well, we always win the party. Now, I'm a diehard Ole Miss fan. I don't apologize for it at all. But that just made me livid. I was so tired of hearing that excuse for poor sports play because it's a terrible excuse. You can win the game and win the party. Let's do both. Let's not have one or the other. And I wrote this column, and I got a lot of very mean and terrible, and that helped me develop a thick skin. It had like 7,000 hits on the website and all this stuff, and I got all these emails and all this backlash put on Mississippi State message boards, and everywhere people were talking about it and all these things, and just hateful things that people said to me because I was a woman and I didn't know what I was talking about, and I had no basis for that. And it was my opinion. I was like, what do you mean I don't have a basis for my opinion? Are you insane? It's my opinion. And so that's probably, I don't let that deter you because, I mean, we're up here kind of telling like our experiences, but you just have to have a thick skin, and you just have to kind of, you know, tell yourself, is it worth covering having a sports job, being a sports editor or a sports writer, if it's still worth all of that? Because I think all three of us would say this is the best freaking job ever. I mean, we get paid to go watch sports. Come on, even when it's a terrible game, it's still a whole lot of fun. So
yeah, I would definitely say the good outweighs the bad. I mean, as far as your experiences and the people you deal with.
Yeah.
I ran into it in a different sense this year. Obviously, as a video person in a newspaper, it's, you know, it's traditional print media, which is now online. And, you know, with media convergence, it's been developing and really growing for about 5-6 years now. But I was the first person in my position at the Clarion Ledger, and it was tough. And it wasn't anything, I really don't think it was anything based on, you know, my gender, but having to crack, it's along the same lines, having to crack the mentality that, you know, no, a video of Hugh Freeze talking, that just straight up talking head, no, that's boring. Nobody wants to watch that. Let's make a package out of it. Doing what I do, you know, bringing my talent of what I was hired for and breaking the mentality of traditional, you know, print media. And that was tough because I ran into an interim sports editor who, our longtime sports editor who had hired me the day I got down to the Clarion Ledger decided to call his newspaper career quits. And it was tough for me, really tough for me to stomach that because I was running into things with interim people who had no idea how to handle my type of position. And I mean, it doesn't relate to anything gender related, but it was, you know, there was perseverance through that. And, you know, I could have given up. I could have just kind of, you know, laid down and died with it and done other stuff. But it's been the most rewarding year of my life, in the sense, professionally, and with awards that I've won for my work. And I don't think had I, backed down on that, I would be, where I am right now. But in this field, you're going to run into battles every single day. You just got to pick which one's worth fighting for.
Oh, there's all kinds of prejudices.
Every day.
I mean, I grew up at my dad and mother worked at the University of Southern Mississippi, and I've made my living for 40 years of covering sports in Mississippi, and all the time got criticized for being pro Southern Miss when the people I knew at Southern Miss are long since gone. I'm working for a newspaper. I'm not working for my alma mater or where I grew up, and there's all kinds of prejudices. Anybody else have a question for one of the ladies? Well, what? There's one.
There's two, actually. She said you could go first, so. No, you're fine.
I went to school for broadcast journalism and Spanish. I did double major. Donica's right. I mean, it's tough because now I don't use my Spanish, so I use it or lose it, and that's part of the reason I got hardest thing at the Clarion Ledger was, I was in a postgraduate internship at the NCAA, and this time a year ago, probably a few months, started about January 2013, I was scrounging for anything. I wanted to go into get a television job because I'm pretty much not too far off from where y'all are at right now. And our executive editor, who's very forward-thinking in that sense, called me out of the blue because I had applied for a Mississippi State beat writer job because Rusty Hampton, our old sports editor, had a blurb in there that says, you must be comfortable being on camera. You're going to be doing it 3-4 days a week. You need to know how to shoot video. And the biggest gripe I have with sports writers, and it's not a bad thing, but a lot of people think TV people don't cover beats.
Oh,
and that's, it's BS because I did it in college. Anytime a sports writer, I went to every single home and away basketball game, went to every home and away football game for a good 3 years that I was covering Indiana football and men's basketball. So I said, I can do this, I have writing skills, but our executive editor pulled my name. Rusty had seen my stuff, and there was a Spanish-speaking, the stand-up I did in Spanish, and that kind of drew his attention. Going back to that, that's about the only Spanish I've used, so, but yeah, it's broadcast journalism in Spanish, and I did student media, which, it always irritated me for some reason, not hating on East Coast people, but we'd always get the New York and New Jersey kids, the frat boys, in a lot of my sports classes with their backwards Knicks caps. I'm gonna work at ESPN someday. What have you done? Have you done student media? Have you written? No, I'm in ZBT, I'm hanging. No, you have to, that's the thing in college, especially, how many seniors do we have in the room right now? Mm-hmm. Most of you guys are underclassmen, right? Do stuff now. There's no better time to find out what you're good at and what you're bad at than in high school. Just have an idea now because I think that's where we got our start.
Yeah, and I'll kind of expand on that thought a little because I was just, when you were talking about that, I was like, oh man. A lot of my running joke is, and y'all, I'm going to depress all of you, and I really don't. I'm very sarcastic if you haven't noticed. My running joke is that if I ever have a child and my child tells me that they want to be a journalist, that I'm going to send them to school for the 4 classes they need and get them an internship somewhere and say, okay, learn it. Because, not because I know you really do, that's just me being sarcastic. You need to go to school, you need to get a degree. But I will amend that and say journalism is one of those things where you don't have to have a degree to be successful. But if you can get a degree, you should. Now, the thing is, you have to apply yourself. So wherever you go to college, if you go to community college first, student media, they will have there will be something involving student media. Get involved, absorb it, learn it, put in the hours, put in the work, because so much of journalism is practice. It's learning, and student media is, I'm not saying you should just blindly make mistakes and just not do your research and not apply yourself, but if you're going to make mistakes, student media is a good time to do it because you're probably not going to get sued or fired, chances are. Now, if you know, make up quotes and plagiarize and things, that's different. But if you just have a typo or you misquote, you know, don't misquote, but things like that. So it's all about applying yourself. But to go back to your question, I was a music major first. I was a music major until my junior year. That's why I was here 5 years. Yeah, vocal performance. I was going to be on Broadway. That was my big dream, you know, whatever. And I just kind of realized that as much as I loved it, I didn't want the stress that came with it day after day. And I had been taking, because I had was involved in summer theater stuff here, and so I was in school, and I took a journalism class on a whim because I'd always enjoyed writing and I wasn't really satisfied with music. Got into it, and I'd been working at the DM and stuff too, so that was part of it. Because I joined the DM as their online person, doing their social media and their website and aggregation and all those things. So I wasn't even writing for the first couple of years. And then I started writing, I started doing Rebel Radio, did a little broadcast, all those different things, and just kind of learned everything I could and taught myself. I didn't really do design. That's a big point. I've learned now, kind of taught myself design. I didn't really do photography. I kind of taught myself photography, you know, in the professional world. But you have the tools here to do all of that and to leave, especially the staff. I mean, I feel like I'm recruiting for Ole Miss right now. I'm really not. This is my experience. The teachers and the staff here will bend over backwards they want to send journalists, graduate journalists that can go out and win a Pulitzer and, you know, do all these incredible things. And they have some that have. I mean, if you start looking, the alumni of this place, that's incredible. But I got my job basically by accident. Really, I just applied to every newspaper, local newspaper I had, and Melissa's hometown, the town that I went to have to do anything, because I live in like a little hole, my hometown, and they had a sports writer job, and they were like, we just need somebody. And they were like, if you don't know how to write sports, we'll teach you. And I had never written a gamer. I had done sports features, I had done sports columns, I had never written a gamer. My first 2 weeks on the job was in the summer, and my editor sat me down and he said, here's a stat sheet, here are some quotes, write a story. And I said, okay. I didn't even know sports AP style. And that's another thing. If you don't know sports AP style and you want to write sports, you better learn it, because it's completely different. And he would take it after I wrote it, and he would say, this is right, this is right, this is wrong, this needs to be improved. And by the time they sent me to do my first story, I was prepared to write a gamer. And that's luck. I mean, that's just God being like, okay, this is what you're supposed to do with your life, and I'm going to show you. And that's not how it's going to happen for everybody. So I guess my moral of the story is, learn. If you want to do this, learn it, so you don't have to hope for luck and kind of just trip your way along.
Yeah, I would expound on what she said, what both of these girls said, you know, get experience now, because, I mean, like, I have a guy who's working for me fresh out of high school that I'm going to be sending to some baseball games, you know. Call your hometown paper, ask them, you know, do you need anybody to write a story? Sometimes they might pay you, sometimes they might not. If you're good with a camera.
Don't be afraid to work for free.
Yeah, if you're good with a camera, a real camera, not a point and click, go out there, shoot some pictures, do like what Courtney does if you have a video camera. And I mean, you know, now you can take video with flip cameras, iPhones, things like that, you know, just get yourself out there. If your school doesn't have a Twitter account,
make one.
Start one, yeah.
Twitter is the easiest thing. Oh my gosh, it's so easy. Even if you just go to games and like nobody tweets scores of games, find whoever your local sport, like, we will love you. This is how you get an in. Let me just tell
somebody
you.
will probably find you, because they'll probably be searching for that score.
If you regularly go to games and no one has a Twitter account, make a Twitter account and tweet the score. Tweet it at your local paper or your local sports editor. You will get retweets and you will get followers like you wouldn't believe.
Or use the MS Preps hashtag.
Yeah.
That's statewide.
Yeah, we all look
or
at
if
that.
you're in Northeast Mississippi, the DJ Preps hashtag.
Yeah, DJ Preps. I never use it though.
I don't either. I don't either, except for during football season.
Yeah.
We got about 2 or 3 minutes left. I think somebody else had a question.
I'll go ahead and start on this one. I would just have to say interacting with the kids. I mean, it's a real rewarding experience. I don't think of myself, no offense, as being a kid person, but you get to meet some really great kids who go through a lot. You know, I mean, I covered a football team this past year who had 6 people tear their ACLs. Well, as you can imagine, that was pretty devastating, but, you know, you saw kids out there the kids that were still able to play out there just working their butts off every day, and you saw these kids over here who were rehabbing. I mean, you get to see that kind of thing. You get to see real human stories.
Yeah, the stories that you find, and it's not just the star player, the kid on the bench that shows up. You would be surprised the number of kids who just show up to play because they love to play and on the scout team and they know they're never going to see action in the game. Those kids are great. Just hanging out with the kids. Baseball, I love baseball because I go in the dugout and I sit with these kids. Because football and basketball, you can't really do that. They're busy, they're in it. Baseball is a slower game. You have time to really get to know and interact and whatever. And these kids are great. I mean, some of them get on my nerves, and it's like my nephew, and I'm just like, I just want to wring your neck and like send you away. But at the same time, they're great because there's a reason they are the way they are. There's a reason they're out there. Everybody has a story. And I mean, somebody told me one time, find a job, this is a pretty common saying, find a job that you would do for free. This is the job I would do for free. Thank God I don't, but I would. If they said, we can't pay you anymore, I would still probably do it.
I think the humanization aspect is my biggest thing. Right now I have the opportunity to be covering the #1 player in the country, Malik Newman. We have a series on him called Beyond the Game, and a lot of times people think with these highly touted, highly recruited, phenoms in their sport that they're just not human. And I mean, I have never met a more loving, just would do anything for anybody type person. And I mean, you just learn stuff because with these highly touted recruits, for example, there was a thing in the fall when his reclassification, the class 2014 came under, it was under speculation. He and I had talked about it, and then I went to go interview his coach. And reclassification means he would move from the class of 2015 up to 2014, and he would be going to college this year. And it was just most perfect timing. I'm in the middle of an interview with this coach who comes in and photobombs, just waving over 16-and-a-half-year-old Malik Newman. And I'm like, it's just those type of things. It's the human element. Clearly, he doesn't want to go. He said, he's like, I'm not mature enough to go. And I'm like, it paints that picture for you. And I think that, as I said in my high school classes, why high school sports are really rewarding, and I think we all agree with that. I mean, at the college level, you get embargoes on players, like Ole Miss, you can't talk to freshmen for whatever stupid reason. But, with high school athletes specifically, I know a lot of you guys want to go into that. There's just, the sky is the limit, and there are so many stories. There's not just the star players. There's the bench warmer kid who's working 3 jobs because his mother's sick and trying to help put his little brother through school. You'll find it anywhere. It's not just Mississippi, it's everywhere.
I'll add this really quick. I did an interview yesterday for a feature story that'll be in Friday's paper. And the kid, he broke a state record last year. He'll break another one Saturday in powerlifting. One of the top guys in the state. And I said, what is your favorite thing? He's a senior. This is his Saturday. Will be his last meet ever. And I said, what is your favorite thing about this year? And he said, he didn't even hesitate. And he said, my brother making it to Jackson. He said he missed it last year. And he said, to see him, he said, it wasn't even about me this year. He said, I was taken care of. And he said, it was about encouraging him and getting him because I wanted to go out knowing that we were both going to compete for a state title in Jackson together. And I was just like, if that doesn't say it all about your job, I don't know what does.
All right, thank you. Y'all got to go get some awards, I understand. Thank you for coming.